So we're continuing our series, Christmas Remix, listening to Christmas differently. So the idea is each week I'm going to take a song, whether it be a carol or just a Christmas song, and I'm going to kind of give it maybe a little bit of a tweak or point out something that maybe from here on out, as you sing it, you'll remember the message and the lesson that went with it. Like last week, we talked about O come, not O come, Emmanuel. We just sang that. O come, all ye faithful, right? And how it actually has some real good doctrine and theology in it, and talks about how Jesus wasn't just any ordinary baby, but Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus was God. And so hopefully throughout the Christmas holiday, as you sing that, you'll remember, hey, this is more than just a cute little song about a cute little baby. This is a song about God, and the whole reason he came to earth was for our salvation. So today we're going to continue in this series, and today we're going to talk about Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. It's a wonderful song, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and it was written for the musical Meet Me in St. Louis. So I don't know if you've ever seen that musical or seen the movie. The original, Judy Garland sang Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And so if you don't know the premise, so basically this family lives in St. Louis, and they're a wonderful family. They're having a wonderful time. They're experiencing life. It's great. Everything's wonderful. Dad comes home one day and says, we're moving to New York City. And the whole family's like, you're crazy, because we love it here. We don't want to move all the way to New York City, right? And so, in fact, Judy Garland's character finally meets the man of her dreams, and now she's going to be moving to New York City. She's going to be so far away, and the youngest daughter is just torn. She's heartbroken because all her friends are there, and it's just a real interesting show. I'm not going to give away the whole ending here, but at one point now, it's around Christmas Eve, maybe even Christmas Eve, and Judy Garland's character is singing this song to her younger sister, trying to console her because they are going to be moving to New York City soon. Now, here's the catch about this song. When Judy Garland first got the lyrics to the song and she read through them, she said, I am not going to sing this song, because if I sing this song, people are going to think I'm a monster. Now, you may be going, it's a lovely song. What's wrong with this song? Why will people think I'm a monster? Well, the reason you think it's a lovely song is because Judy Garland said, I'm not going to sing the original song. They'll think I'm a monster. And we're going to go over some of the lyrics that were in the original song before it got changed actually for Meet Me in St. Louis. And you'll understand maybe just a little bit of why Judy Garland is like, no. Okay, so again, let me set the scene. Younger sister is crying, distraught. You're about ready to move to New York and move away from all your lifelong friends, the only place she's ever known, all this. You're about ready to move to New York, and this is the last Christmas here in St. Louis, okay? So let's take a look at some of the lyrics. You know, have yourself a merry little Christmas. It may be your last. There you go. What a wonderful thing to say to a little girl. Hey, have yourself a merry little Christmas. This might be the last happy Christmas you ever have in your entire life. This is it, so you better enjoy it now. Next year, we may all be living in the past. There's no future. There's no hope. We're just going to be constantly looking back here. All right, so let your heart be light. Next year, all our troubles will be out of sight. So instead of that, instead of the original, we went to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, Let Your Heart Be Light. Next year, all your troubles will be out of sight. Much softer, much nicer. So I'm happy that Judy Garland said, no, I want this changed. From now on, from now on, there was a line where it was that from now on, but they changed it to soften that up to, I forget. Sorry, I lost my mind. Faithful friends who were dear to us will be near to us no more. Again, poor little girl, I'm heartbroken. I'm moving away from all my friends. You're right. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be miserable. And again, this is the last happy Christmas you might have. Now, how in the world is this poor girl supposed to have a happy Christmas when Judy's telling her all these wonderful things? Faithful friends who were dear to us will be near to us once more is how they switched it. So instead of saying, hey, they're not going to be here anymore, they switched it. Now, this next line, Frank Sinatra got a hold of this song, wanted to put it on one of his records, and his record was called Jolly Christmas. And he said, look, it's still not happy enough. Can you cheer it up just a little bit more? So instead of faithful friends who are dear to us will be near to us once more, it's faithful friends who are dear to us gather near to us once more. So Frank Sinatra wanted it a little bit chipper, a little bit more happy, and so they switched that line to make that a little bit happier as well. And then from now on, we'll have to muddle through somehow. And then until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. So at the end of the song, the original was, okay, well, from now on, we're not going to know what we're doing. We're not going to know anybody. We're just going to have to endure life. We're just going to have to muddle through, right? And so they softened it up to, until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. And Frank Sinatra actually changed it to this: hang a shining star upon the highest bough. So Sinatra's like, I don't want any muddling, right? This is happy, jolly Christmas, happy Christmas. Not, muddle, trying to figure life out, no. So he went to hang a shining star upon the highest bough. So what happened was, when Judy first went to the writers and said, I can't sing this, their initial response was, no, this is how we wrote the song. This is how it's going to stay. And one of the other characters from the musical came up to him and said, hey, guys, you're blowing it here. This is Judy Garland. She wants to sing the song if you change it. She's not going to sing your song if you don't change. So you have, basically, he was saying, you have a choice. Change the song and have one of the biggest stars of the time sing your song, or leave it the same, and it's never, ever going to be heard. Right? So thankfully, they changed it, and it was a much softer song for the musical. It was funny, as I was doing the research for this, I forgot that it was in that musical, right? And I had just recently seen the musical, and then I flashed back to it. I'm like, oh. Part of me was like, it would have almost turned it into more of a comedy if poor Judy Garland is having to sing to her sister, this is it, honey. This is the last good Christmas you're going to have, right? Have yourself a merry little Christmas. This may be your last. But it kept getting softer and softer, happier and happier. And I want to focus on this last line most. Now, if you listen to the radio this time of year, great time of year to listen to the radio, Christmas music everywhere, right? You will hear, have yourself a merry little Christmas. You'll hear all sorts of different versions, right? People have just taken it and run with it and tweaked it. And you may hear, from time to time, you may hear one that ends, we'll have to muddle through. Okay, so those are still out there. You will hear, hang a shining star. You may even hear some that put them both in the same song. So they'll sing it and they'll muddle through the first time, and then afterwards they'll be a little bit happier and they'll hang a star on their tree, right? So you may hear different versions. But as you go through the Christmas season, I hope every time you hear this song, you can start to think of what we're going to be talking about here next. And we're going to be shifting gears here a little bit. When Frank Sinatra talks about hang a shining star upon the highest bough, right? I don't know what your Christmas tree looks like at home. Here we have an angel on top of our tree because, well, apparently that's what has always gone on top of that tree. So that's what we have. So that's what we put. At my house, we have a star, right? And we hang a star. And if you know me, I love Christmas, and so I'm very intentional even with our Christmas tree. So we have the star, and then underneath the star we have this ornament of angels, right? And then underneath that is an ornament with the manger scene. And so this was a 4-piece set, these ornaments. And then over here to the side, we have a scene with the shepherds. And then in the very back of the tree that you can't see down towards the bottom is the ornament that came with that set with the wise men. Right? So I'm like, no, we don't see the wise men yet. They're not here. So, right? But the whole intention is, all right, we have the star, because the star, to me, is one of the symbols of Christmas, right? It's the star that led the Magi to eventually get there, right? And so it's something that when you see a star, you can think of Christmas, this light, this, when you think of Christmas time, you think of the trees being lit up. Cedar Rapids has a few displays that you can drive through and see the Christmas lights. When you think of Christmas, you think of lights and decorations. So now I want to turn our focus to John chapter 8, verse 12. And Jesus is speaking. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So from now on, when you hear that song, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, I don't care if it ends with hang a shining star upon the highest bough or muddle through somehow. I want you to begin to think of this verse. Now let me set the stage here for you a little bit. The Bible's awesome, and reading the Bible, you can gain so much knowledge and insight. But when you're able to really dive in and really put things into context, it helps so much to bring even verses like this to life even more. So what is happening at the time that Jesus says this is there was a festival called the Festival of Tabernacle. Okay, and this had just ended, and Jesus is in the temple court, and he would have been in the women's court. So the women's court basically is where anyone who is seeking God, anyone who is desiring God's presence can go. And there were different levels, of course, in the temple that if you were a Gentile, that was, you could only go so far. If you were a woman, you could only go so far. If you were a guy, you could only go so far until you were a priest, and so forth and so. This part where Jesus is standing now, anyone could be there. If you were searching for God, this is a place that you could go no matter who you were, right? So he's in there. It's at the end of the Festival of Tabernacles. Now, here's an interesting thing. I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but I'll tell you what. We are going to, one of these times, one of these series, we are going to dive deep into this festival because there's so much to it. And a lot of what Jesus has to say, if you understand this festival, you'll be like, oh my goodness, that's amazing, right? Okay, so, but what I will say is at the beginning of the festival, it's a 7-day festival, they have these 4 giant, like, candelabra type things. They're 75 feet tall. Okay? So they're pretty big. And they're filled with oil. And they go up and they light these candelabras. And they're massive. And the light that comes from these, they say, would light up all of Jerusalem. Every court in Jerusalem would be lit up by the light coming from these huge, huge candelabra type things. And the reason why they lit those was they were to help remind the Jewish people of God's presence that came and rested on the tabernacle while they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. It was to remind them of God's presence. And also to remind them, and now catch this, also to remind them, if you remember, as they were wandering, as they were leaving Egypt, there was a pillar of fire that would guide them at night, God's presence. And these were to remind the Israelites of that fire, that God was with them, that God was leading them, that God was directing them. It was the light of life. Now, that's the scene. The festival has gone on for 7 days. What would happen is when those were lit, then a lot of the church leaders and people who were pious and that sort of thing, they would grab torches and they would dance in celebration around these. It was a huge celebratory thing. It was something that, everyone, in fact, it was one of the festivals that it was determined, you will come to Jerusalem for this. You will show up. If you are an Israelite, you will come back to Jerusalem. Everyone's coming back for this. It is a massive celebration. It is huge celebration for 7 days. And then they put out the lights. And it is to symbolize the end of that, for them, kind of the church year. And Passover is just about ready to start. And that starts off the new church year of just the whole storytelling of, remember when we were in Egypt and the Passover came, and just going on, and then telling the story through these festivals and coming back to the Festival of Tabernacles. So the festival's over, the lights have just been put out. Jesus enters the court. He's standing where you can see him, and you can see these huge lights that had just been shining throughout this festival, symbolizing God's presence and his light with Israel. And Jesus makes this claim: I am the light of the world. He is standing in the presence of those huge 75-foot lights to remind them of who God is, and that God's presence was with them, and God came in this form of light. And in that culture, light was so much of pointing towards God's presence. And in the shadows of that, Jesus has the audacity. At the end of the festival, when this is all fresh, all of Israel has come and celebrated this, and it's fresh in their minds about God leading them and God being the light and God's presence with them. Jesus comes and says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Think of that. They had just put out the lights, which means that night, all the courts of Jerusalem wouldn't be lit up by those lights. He's saying these are temporary. These are just a symbol. This is just a reminder. I am here to tell you, I am the one you just got done celebrating for 7 days. I am the light of the world. You don't have to muddle through. I will light the way. I will be with you. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Can you imagine the impact? Can you imagine now, with that backdrop, knowing a little bit of the setting that Jesus makes this claim? There would have still been so many people around and in that court hearing what Jesus had to say. And Jesus just stands and says, good news. Good news, folks. You know what that symbolizes, those lights? I'm here. I'm here. You no longer have to search. You no longer have to say, oh, remember when this happened to our ancestors? Remember when this happened to our people back then? No, 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 no. I'm here. I'm the light of the world. You can have the light of life for always, not just 7 days, not just as a reminder, but forever. Now, after that happened, of course, some people were like, oh my goodness. And they right away were like, this has got to be the Messiah. Others were like, crazy person. Jewish leaders came up and questioned him and, asked, hey, what authority do you have to be able to say this? You can't be your own witness. And Jesus had a great response to them, basically, hey, trust me, I've got a great witness. And but now comes the time. What about you? What do you say about Jesus? Who do you say Jesus is really? It's Christmas time, right? And here we go. We got our own little porcelain baby Jesus. Do you leave him there? Or do you say, yes, you are my light? Are you muddling through? Are you just muddling through life and you're just like, oh, I just can't figure this out. Oh, why can't I catch a break? Oh, I'm so confused. I have no direction. I just don't know where to go, what my next step should be. Are you someone who's just said, you know what, no, Jesus is not who he says he was? I would say maybe you need to reinvestigate. Because, man, there's so much evidence that Jesus really is who he claimed he is. Maybe you've made that commitment and said, yeah, I want to be a Christ follower. But somehow you've forgotten. And the lights have been extinguished. And you find yourself muddling. You find yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what my next step is. I still feel so lost. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus doesn't want us to muddle through. We need to remember that he is the light of life. And we need to cling to that. And we need to accept that. And we need to celebrate. I mean, think about a 7-day festival. I still, I want to lobby the Wesleyan Church every now and then and say, you know what? We need to go back to some of this. Having a 7-day party sounds pretty good to me sometimes. I think we could use that from time to time. I mean, food, music, all that for 7 straight days, and being able to say, this was, God told me to do this, is a great thing. But think about it. They celebrated. They celebrated big time. Do you celebrate the light of life in your life? Or have you kind of turned your back and went, I'm really not sure it's true. I'm here. I want to encourage you. Jesus is who he said he is. At Christmas time, we don't just celebrate a birth, like Dan has been saying. We celebrate the birth of Jesus who existed before time. It is just simply God coming to earth, humbling himself to make a way for us to be able to reconnect with him. I mean, think about Jesus is basically saying in that tabernacle, that light that was with your ancestors, I'm him. I was there then, I'm here now, and I will be here forever. So, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey, I think this song can kind of take on a new meaning. I mean, one, we can look and we can laugh and go, oh my goodness, these people wrote this horrible song about how it's going to be your last fun Christmas ever, your friends are never going to be around you, and you're just going to have to muddle through for the rest of your life, right? But for some of us, that might be where we are in our spiritual journey. We feel that way. And I would say, man, accept the light. Follow the light. Commit to that and just say, God, I want to follow you. I don't want to continue muddling. I need your help. I need your guidance. I need your direction. Some of us maybe think we're doing fine, and, man, like me, we love Christmas, we celebrate, but have we lost the real meaning of Christmas? I think I said this last Christmas Eve, without Easter, there is no Christmas. Without Jesus dying and raising again, his birth would have been lost. And so when it's Christmas time, we don't just celebrate Jesus being born, we celebrate his life, his sacrifice, and his resurrection, and what that means for us. So maybe this Christmas, oh man, I don't want to muddle through and miss it again. I want to hang a light. I want to put up a star, and I want to just say, oh, that's right, that's what we celebrate. And all of a sudden, the celebration becomes more joyful. Even through pain, we can say, yes, but there's hope, there's joy, there's peace that God still has to offer us. So this Christmas, I just want to encourage you, every time you see a candle, every time you see Christmas lights, every time you drive through your neighborhood and you see everyone else's Christmas lights, or you go on one of those drive-through displays, or the walk by the river that they have up now, every time you see Christmas lights, I want you to remember this song, Hanging a Shining Star Upon the Highest Bough, and I want you to remember what Jesus said. I am the light of the world. And it's time for us to follow him. And to truly, not just give him lip service, but to follow and say, yes, God, I don't want to muddle anymore. I want, Jesus said as well, I've come to give you life and life to the full. That doesn't sound like muddling to me. God offers us peace and joy, patience, kindness. So this year, let Christmas lights mean something new. Let this song, every time you hear this song, in a weird way, remind you of who Jesus really is. Let's go ahead and pray. Oh, God, we just thank you. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for what you've done, what you're doing, and what you'll continue to do. God, for some of us, if we're honest, we've been muddling through. And God, that phrase in that song, muddle through somehow, strikes a chord in our heart because we relate so much to that. But God, you don't want us to muddle through. God, you came to give us peace and hope. God, you came to give us direction. You came to heal our relationship. God, help us to accept you, to truly, really, honestly accept who you are and what that means to be a follower of you. So, God, that we will not have to walk through darkness. And, God, let us celebrate this Christmas. God, let it be an amazing celebration, not just because there's fun music and food and presents, but, God, help all those things to point and just truly continue to remind us of the joy that we have because of what you've done for us. In your name we pray. Amen.